Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Christine. It's so lovely to have you here. I am a homeschooling mama of 3 kiddos aged 7, 5, and 3. And I share homeschool content here, so if that is something you're interested in, please go ahead and subscribe. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you one of my pet peeves about the homeschooling community, and I'm curious to know if anyone else feels the same. So, welcome. We're about to get a little bit more personal. I don't usually do chats like this where I just sit down and sort of speak my mind on topics. But this is something that's really been bothering me probably for like the last year and a half. So, maybe even longer than that. I don't know. I've just seen it more so lately and it's really been frustrating to me. And more so because I'm in touch with a lot of brand new homeschoolers now, and so I see how it affects them, and yeah, it just frustrates me. And so I want to chat about it and open the discussion, and I'm curious to hear what your feedback is on it. So, this is what my biggest pet peeve at the moment with the homeschooling community is, and I don't mean local homeschooling community, I mean homeschool community at large, whether that's online or physical, whatever. It is the idea that traditional homeschool or just any curriculum that doesn't fit your homeschool philosophy is not a good curriculum or shouldn't be used or shouldn't be recommended. It drives me bonkers. It drives me bonkers because it just completely contradicts what homeschooling is all about, okay? So, like, I'm not talking about comparing curriculums, because I do plenty of that, and I'm not talking about, like, recommending curriculums to people. I'm talking about people who flat out say, oh, no, that's a terrible curriculum. It's, like, so awful because it's just traditional and blah, 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 and so just don't even look at it. We are all unique. The whole point in homeschooling our children is that we get to tailor their education to them as unique individuals. I'm seeing more and more in the like homeschool communities in general is people subscribe to these homeschool philosophies, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with having a homeschool philosophy. But what I'm finding is that people are subscribing to these philosophies and becoming like avid purists to the point of which they just throw out any other kind of homeschool philosophy. Like everything else is bad and their philosophy is the only good way to do things. And I just want to like stand up and say, I am a second generation homeschooler. I was homeschooled along with many of my peers that I grew up with, like friends that I know. Obviously we're all different ages because we're like, and there are a lot of them from large families. And I can guarantee you that not a single family homeschooled exactly the same way. None of us used exactly the same curriculum in exactly the same way. They all used something different. And you know what? We all turned out okay. We all did things differently. We've, chosen different paths in life. But more than one of us succeeded. It wasn't only one family who chose to do things a certain way because they adapted the curriculum to suit their children and they chose what worked for their family. And so this is kind of like a little public service announcement that it's okay to have your homeschool philosophy. It's okay to love Charlotte Mason and everything she stood for and want to focus on using her philosophy as like, as closely to that as you possibly can with your homeschool. But I just want to urge you to consider the fact that other philosophies aren't bad just because you love your one. So my example for this is that I was raised using Abeka for the most part. We changed, like my mom definitely was a bit more eclectic towards the end and chopped and changed, but Abeka was like the spine for a good many years. And I really enjoyed most of the subjects. It was a very, very successful homeschool curriculum for me. And I really enjoyed it. It was good. As a homeschool parent now, I second guessed ever choosing anything from Abeka because it is so badly talked about online in homeschool communities. Like it's this dirt boring, like just workbook heavy, intense program, and it's almost like torture to make your children use that kind of a curriculum. And I'm not exaggerating, that I'm not trying to just be dramatic. Like, I genuinely have seen comments like this. And so I let that get to me for sure. And it definitely held me back from choosing it as a curriculum to use with my children. Well, this year, guess what? I'm using Abeka Language Arts with my kindergartner. So like my little baby, my precious little young baby who, I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic in my mind, who can't, do these rigorous academics. She's loving it. She's loving it. There's nothing dry or boring about it. She loves it. And so I just feel I've been wanting to make this video for a little while because it just really frustrates me. It is one thing to say that a curriculum didn't work for you or it's not something that aligns with the values in your family. That's fine. But to just completely dismiss a curriculum because of the style of it or, whenever it was published or whoever let people do their own research. Let people come to their own conclusions. It's okay. We don't all have to do things the exact same way. In fact, I think there's so much beauty in the fact that we don't. And I also really just don't love this divide of we're more of a genuine homeschooler, or let's say I am more of a genuine homeschooler because I'm an eclectic homeschooler, or I follow Charlotte Mason. But, people who use videos and online curriculum, they're not real homeschoolers. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but they're homeschooling their kids. We all do it differently. I've used some online classes for my kids for certain things. That doesn't make us any less homeschoolers than anybody else. And it's just this kind of elitism that is coming out in some places that just is nasty. I do understand, the world has changed a lot in the last 2 years, and so I can understand people's hesitation at the growth in the homeschool community. It can be a beautiful thing, but sometimes it can also feel a bit scary because it can change things. So I do understand that. I really do I understand where that comes from. But just this idea of everyone has to do it a certain way is wrong. It just is. It defeats the point of homeschooling. There are many beautiful curriculums out there. There are many different styles of homeschooling. And what makes homeschooling so very beautiful is that we get to pick what works for our children and tailor their education to suit them. I was talking with several homeschool moms recently just about the fact that when our children are homeschooled, who they are, who God created them to be, is celebrated. They get to lean into that and to grow it and to not be made to feel like there's something wrong with them. Now, I'm not saying this is true of all public school settings, but certainly in the country I live in, you go to school and you're supposed to conform. You're supposed to fit into a specific mold that they have set out for children. And if you don't fit into that, then you were made to feel like there is something wrong with you. And how very, very heartbreaking is that for our children to, from the time they're 5 years old or even younger sometimes, to be made to feel as though who they were created to be, that there's something wrong with that. And I'm not talking about character flaws. I'm just talking about our unique design. One kid might love to read. One kid might love to draw. One kid, those kinds of things I'm talking about. Just our quirky traits that God has given us. I love the fact that homeschooling lets me build up my children's self-confidence from the time they're very young. Confidence in who God has made them. So I don't necessarily love self-confidence, but in who God has made them and designed them to be, and how beautiful that is. And I don't want that to ever leave the homeschool community. I will pull my children close to my side if I ever feel like they are having to be made to conform into something that they were not created or designed to be. I want them to be, proud is the wrong word, but to be confident in who God made them and to love that about themselves because God chose that for them, and that's really special. So I know this is a long, rambly video, and this is why I don't usually make these kind of videos because I like to stay on point. But this is just a general thing I've seen over the last little while, and it has frustrated me. And I just want to say to you, if you are a new homeschool mom or you're someone who's been doing it for a little while, but your confidence is still lacking, you do not have to conform to anybody else's standards. except for what works for your family. And so if there is a curriculum that you think is going to work for your child, who cares what Sally down the street says, or, Julie from the homeschool co-op. I'm just pulling random names out of the air. Do what works for your child. There is so much beauty in that, and it is so freeing when you really, really step into that. And I think I've just felt very frustrated because there's been people coming from the public school system here who are going into homeschool their children and are just starting to learn what that freedom feels like, and then they read on like homeschool forums and stuff, oh no, you can't use that because it's this or whatever, and that freedom's then taken away again. I'm like, no. You can use whatever you want, as long as it's within your own laws and regulations of wherever you live and what you have to, do legally. Don't let anybody else's homeschool opinions infringe on what you believe is right for your child. Do what is right. Do what works. It is so much fun when you do it that way. So I don't know if this was helpful for anyone. I don't know if you can relate in any way whatsoever. But I just wanted to share this because I've seen it a lot, and it just makes me very frustrated. Because, not everything is bad if it doesn't tie into your way of homeschooling. So, I don't know. I hope that made sense. And I hope this was encouraging to someone who might be struggling a little bit with this. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no war.